एक सेकेंड आई जस्ट ट्राई मैं इसको स्टार्ट करता हूँ सेशन को Assalamu alaikum all and welcome to Saria's Twitter space. Today's session is extremely crucial as we will discuss the foreign policy of some countries who actually pretend to be our friends but then at the same time serve the interest of our mortal enemy India. Recently there have been some rough statements from US President Joe Biden who has a track record of giving similar statements. जब ये वीपी भी थे, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट थे ओबामा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में भी, तो इनके इसी तरह की स्टेटमेंट्स पाकिस्तान के रिलेटेड आती थी. There were similar statements he used to give when he was vice president in Obama's administration. So today we requested Sir Zaid Hamid to grace us with his insights, experience, and expectation on this statement which Joe Biden has given. And we will be also asking him some questions in the same domains. Rules of the sessions are very simple. You will send your request to me and note down your questions because जब तक session खत्म नहीं होगा हम आपके questions नहीं लेंगे. End में I will give you the mark and I will give you the mic and you can then ask your questions accordingly. Without wasting much time, let's go to the session. और सर हमने थोड़े से क्वेश्चंस मैंने इसके लिए सोचे थे कि मैंने कहा जरा आप से उनके ऊपर जरा क्लैरिटी ले लें. तो starting with the first question, we have been noticing Israelis concerned about Pakistan nuclear program since decades and perhaps more than the Indians. हमने देखा कि Israelis को ज़्यादा फिक्र हमारे nuclear program की होती है. Why is Israel so paranoid about, let's say, कि Pakistan hitting Tel Aviv with missiles? इतना paranoid क्यों है Israel इस बारे में? Yes, sir. Over to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri ahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Naveed, you have to understand one basic, most fundamental doctrine of Israel's national security. That is that there should not be any strong Muslim country in the neighborhood of Israel in the Middle East. And secondly, there must not be any Muslim country with nuclear weapons. As long as these two conditions are not fulfilled, Israel feels insecure and feels that its security can never be guaranteed. You have seen the first part being accomplished. Almost all powerful Muslim countries around Israel has either been destroyed or totally compromised by the Israelis. But the second aspect, that a Muslim country should not have nuclear weapons, they could not prevent that from happening. That is why they are against the nuclear program of Iran. And that is why they are mortally against Pakistan. Even the Indians don't feel so much threatened from Pakistan because Indians feel they have an arrogance of superiority, arrogance of size that the Indians have. They feel that they can overrun Pakistan, they can overwhelm us. They feel they understand us, they are also a nuclear weapon state. But Israelis are terribly insecure. They feel that as long as an Islamic ideological state like Pakistan possesses nuclear weapons, the idea of greater Israel can never be achieved. So that becomes the most fundamental existential threat for Israel if Pakistan possesses the nuclear weapons, and that we do. We are both Israel and Pakistan are ideological states. We almost came into being simultaneously together at the same time in history. We came earlier, they came later. And both countries know that in the long run, the final decisive war will be between Pakistan and Israel. And when you talk of an ideological nation, when you talk of a country based on an ideology, then naturally its religious ideology is the core which builds the narrative upon which that state is created. Israelis also have this ideological religious narrative like we do. Our Islamic civilization, our scriptures, the prophetic traditions, the ahadith, whatever is said by the Prophet ﷺ, everything defines to this geopolitical end that in the final confrontation, After Pakistan destroys India, after the Ghazwa-i-Hind, the final battle will be between Pakistanis leading the Muslim world against the Israelis. They know that. They know our scriptures. They know the destiny that is going to unfold. So they're trying to prevent that. They're trying to thwart that. They're trying to block the destiny that they know is coming towards them. And to make it happen, they have to destroy Pakistan. Just like Pharaoh, he knew a baby will be born which will become Musa. So, in search of that one baby, he killed millions of babies, perhaps, hoping that he's going to kill Musa before he becomes a threat for Pharaoh. And this is precisely what the Israelis are trying to do. They know Pakistan is the Musa which is going to come after them. And that's what David Ben Gurion had once said, that we don't have to be afraid of the Arabs. But the friends of the Arabs, we have to be very careful about, because they are the ones who are not afraid of us, who are going to confront us. And if they possess, like the nuclear weapons that we have, the Israeli national security strategy says no matter what the cost, that country or its nuclear weapons have to be destroyed. That is why you find Israelis bigger enemies to Pakistan than the Indians. Ji Naveed.
Sir, how does Israel, when it is so clear to all Muslim countries and even Pakistan, so how does Israel traps Muslim countries into peace accords and recognition bids? Because हमने देखा जितनी भी इन्होंने ये सारी की हैं peace accords और ये, तो उन सारों से ये मुकर जाते हैं और फिर it's about Israel getting more land. तो ये लोग क्यों इनकी बातों में आ जाते हैं? I mean, what do you think it is the basic problem in this?
You see, you have to, again, another doctrine of the Israeli foreign policy is that they will fight the world to the last American. It's their control of the US foreign policy. It's their control of the US military industrial complex. It is their control of the policies of the American empire that they are able to achieve what a country of their size could never dream before them. The fact that this Zionist state actually controls the entire foreign policy of the United States. And it has become a fundamental pillar of the US foreign policy. The defense and security of Israel is going to be the most important pillar of the US foreign policy. So you see that Israel does not go to war with countries directly, except against militias and Hezbollah or with Hamas or these small and maybe a few airstrikes on Syria and here and there. They avoid going to war directly. They use the American firepower. They use the American military industrial complex, the US foreign policy and the economic clout to destroy the countries which Israelis consider as a threat to them. And while the US foreign policy also includes containment of Russia and containment of China and controlling the global fuel and fossil assets and global trading routes and land routes, but the most important aspect is security of Israel, which require that all those Muslim countries which can potentially become a threat to Israel should be destroyed. And they use the American firepower to do that. They destroyed Iraq, they destroyed Libya, they destroyed Syria, and they completely compromised Egypt. So military threat to Israel from a Muslim country in its neighborhood is actually gone. And all the firepower that they used to achieve this without even getting one Israeli soldier killed was the American firepower. The American troops died. American taxpayers paid for it. American military industrial complex deployed its entire might to destroy the Middle East to protect Israel. That's how they do it. Smart people. In 1971, for example, when East Pakistan was dismembered, people talk about the role of Indians and the Soviets, but Israelis were heavily involved with Indians at that time to dismember East Pakistan, to damage Pakistan. And ever since, Israelis have been heavily active with Indians, supporting them with technology, with economic power, with intelligence, with everything that India requires. Because for Israelis, India is a natural ally. to stop Pakistan, to destroy Pakistan. And Israelis want to fight Pakistan to the last Indian practically. But since the Indians also have the Akhand Bharat or the Greater India concept, and they want to annihilate Pakistan too. So this convergence of Jewish Zionist and Hindu Zionist against Pakistan becomes a natural alliance. And even right now, as you see, I mean, a couple of years back when the Balakot strike took place, it was a known fact. Even the government of Pakistan, despite being politically submissive, acknowledged that three countries conspired to attack Pakistan. And one of them was Israel, second was Americans, and the third were Indians. And there was also talk of an Israeli pilot being shot down, which, well, everybody knows what happened after that. At first they acknowledged and then they refused to acknowledge. He was returned quietly. Nobody talks about it now. But Israelis have always been directly involved in Kashmir, in propping up the Indian armed forces, in protecting them, in defending them, in giving them equipment and supplies. And the objective is that Israel cannot fight Pakistan directly. And Israel need India to do the dirty job for them. And a nuclear war between India and Pakistan would probably destroy both countries, but that serves the Israeli purpose. So Israelis don't give a damn about the Indians. The only thing they're doing is they're using Indians to destroy the mortal threat that Israel feels from Pakistan. That's how they do it, using the other major global powers to destroy their enemies. They don't fight them directly, except through intelligence or using the resources, political and diplomatic, or intelligence perhaps, or assassinations. But the war to destroy a country which is hostile to them, they use other powers like United States, and now they're trying to use India against Pakistan. Ginavi.
Sir, as serious threats are approaching us fast, so should we, I mean, talking about the nuclear arsenal and warheads, do you think that because Indian Army has done it before, should we decentralize the warheads with commanding officers on ground? Given the current dynamics of urban warfare, what do you think? Who should have the control of preemptive nuclear strikes, and what actually is the red line of Pakistan? I mean, जिसके ऊपर you can say the preemptive strikes can happen.
You see, Ravi, the time we are living in, I mean, it is absolutely incredible that you see the world talking about a third world war and a nuclear war in Europe. I mean, the way Russia and Europe are threatening each other and Americans are threatening them with a nuclear strike and a counter nuclear strike. We have entered into an era of wars, and not just wars, not just world wars with conventional weapons, but with weapons of mass destructions. So, what the globalists have done now is, after the COVID lockdowns of 2020, when they started this COVID thing, it was known that for next 10 years, they are going to reshape the world according to their plan, which they call the global reset, so that they can build back better. I mean, all these terms are from the World Economic Forum that I'm using, and those who understand this know what I'm referring to. So destroying the existing world is critical for them to rebuild it in their new world order. These are not conspiracies anymore. For the last 3 years, you have seen it, Europe turning into fascist dictatorships. The way they are forcing the people to wear masks, to lock down, the police brutalities. I mean, there are no more police in Europe now. They're all SS troopers. They're all stormtroopers actually now. They're all armies on the streets, literally, police in army uniforms, attacking the people for protesting the lockdowns or face masks or vaccinations. So we are entering into a very violent age. And especially after the Ukraine war, when the whole world is literally on the edge of a nuclear apocalypse, this is the time when Indians also feel that they have an opportunity. Israelis also feel that they have an opportunity to launch India against Pakistan, because the world would be too distracted in Europe. Normally, both how the balance of power was maintained between Pakistan and India was that the leadership of both the countries would assume that since both countries are nuclear powers, World powers will not let a war take place between Pakistan and India. But now, and if there is a confrontation, if there's a chances of hostilities or a war, world powers and the United Nations will step in to prevent that. But now the whole world itself is entering into an era of war. The world powers are fighting each other, whether the Chinese or the Russians or the Americans or the European Union or the NATO, they are all actually on the edge of a nuclear war themselves. And if Pakistan and India go to war, no world power has the time or the attention or the priority to step in to prevent such a war, especially in a time when they themselves want the world to be destroyed through lockdowns, economic collapse, supply chain disasters, food genocide, famines, and ultimately wars and human migrations. So this is part of the agenda which is being deployed since 2020. So now, what the Indians are doing is they are building up a conventional army. They have spent over $100 billion in the last 2 years building up a conventional army, from aircraft carriers to S-400 systems to Rafale aircraft to drone warfare systems to armored vehicles to weapons and equipment, right down from a battlefield rifle to an S-400 system to aircraft carrier. I mean, the inventory is stunning. One has to acknowledge that. The amount of weapon systems they are procuring and buying and deploying and training, even their ammunition dumping has taken place. They have deployed airborne brigades and mountain divisions next to a Gilgit and Skardu and northern Pakistan regions. So from Arabian Sea to the Siachen ranges of the Siachen in north, I mean, Indians have planned to open up at least 1,500-kilometer access war front against Pakistan, something like what the Russians are doing against the Ukrainians. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan's nuclear doctrine was always defensive in nature. We were never had a proactive nuclear doctrine that we would go in and we would be the first to attack India. And that doctrine exists even today. So Indians know that Pakistan had developed a doctrine that if Pakistan feels threatened by India, we could use our tactical nuclear weapons to stop their invading army. And that's why they have redefined their military doctrine. They have created very fast-moving, mobile, integrated battle groups with all the arms available to them, from Air Force to the armor, artillery, missiles, rockets, everything available into one integrated battle group. And these battle groups are supposed to be lean and mean and fast and breaking through Pakistani borders, entering into Pakistani cities, and going under the nuclear threshold, keeping the war conventional so that Pakistan is not able to use nuclear weapons on its own territory. If Indians break through into Lahore or Sialkot, will Pakistan use a nuclear weapon on Sialkot and Lahore? No. So that's what the Indians are playing on. Plus, will any international power come from outside to prevent the war or stop the war? No. So that's what Indians are counting on. Move under the nuclear umbrella, move fast, enter into Pakistani urban areas, and then create a crisis for Pakistani security leadership and national leadership. So while Indians are inside our borders, like the Russians are inside the Ukrainian borders, but Ukraine doesn't have a nuclear bomb. If Ukraine had it, would Ukraine use it on its own cities? That's where the crisis is, because nuclear bomb could only be useful if you use it in the enemy territory. You can't use it in your own. And if your own cities are occupied, that's a dilemma. And this is something our leadership has to think now, because this is exactly what the Indians plan. They know our nuclear doctrine. They know we are not preemptive. They know we are not aggressive. They know we are only going to react. So they are counting on the fact that Indians will be able to break through our borders and enter into our cities and then create a crisis for Pakistani leadership. So, and they are studying the Russian-Ukrainian war very, very, very closely. So you can be sure that Indians will deploy exactly the same strategy, right down to the drone warfare that is taking place against Pakistan in very near future. Ji Naveed.
Ji sir, coming to let's go back to first of all clear the Biden statement, and we have been hearing this since like 2001 when they started the war on terror. They used the terms like rogue elements for the intelligence agency, and then for our Pak army, they started like a negative narrative. Sometime they were saying that the Taliban, they are 100 kilometer from Islamabad. Pakistani nukes are they're gonna take over the nuke. Sometime they were saying that the terrorists are going to get hold of the nuke. But all these narratives, I think now when Biden is back as president, they are continuing from the same point right now. And Joe Biden right now, I mean, if you see that they were threatening Saudi Arabia yesterday on oil, and they like couple of days later he started threatening Pakistan on the nuclear arsenal. So, but this time there is a different thing that he's not saying it that it's a rogue element or the terrorist groups or the Taliban. He is taking the whole Pakistani nation in it, and he said that Pakistan is the most dangerous nation. Yeah, like every one of us is like the most dangerous nation in the world. So, what do you think? Why are Americans concerned about Pakistani preemptive strike? I mean, when they know that if Pakistani territorial integrity will be challenged, they will go for the preemptive strike. Do you think that they are sure on that? That is why they are countering it before the things happen.
Always remember the Indian strategy of attacking Pakistan. Before they launched the military invasion, like they did in 1971 into East Pakistan, Indians focused on two critical mission objectives, and they achieved them both before the invasion. Number one was to create enough political and military anarchy inside Pakistan so that Pakistan army gets bogged down inside the country, more involved in internal security duties than defending the borders. And secondly, Pakistan is isolated globally within the big powers, within the powers that matter. And India has forged an alliance with them against Pakistan. In 1971, India had forged an alliance with Soviet Union and Israel, and they had the tacit support of the Americans. Americans had actually allowed them to capture East Pakistan. And bluffing continued to bluff Pakistan. The Americans were Pakistani allies, that they continued to bluff Pakistan that we are sending the 7th Fleet to the Bay of Bengal to prevent the Indians from taking over East Pakistan. Complete bullshit, complete bluff. Entire Pakistani state and the leadership fell for these lies. And American Indians were comfortable. They knew that no 7th Fleet is going to come. And they had an open field, isolating Pakistan diplomatically, trapping Pakistan army in the internal security duties, and then invading the country from the outside. This is exactly what the Indians are doing now. They have forged alliance with Israel again, with the Americans. And as far as Pakistan's security is concerned, they know that Russia is not going to fight for Pakistan. China is not going to fight for Pakistan. Pakistan will have to fight on its own 2 feet, stand on its own legs, and defend its own honor, land, and territory and property. No other country is going to fight for Pakistan, especially if Pakistanis are not willing to fight themselves. So what the American Indians have done is, for the last 2 years, they were massively preparing for an invasion, conventional weapons, but just last week, they have finally tested their second strike capability from a nuclear submarine, launching a nuclear missile. That is the culmination of their preparations required. And immediately after that, the Americans, Biden, first targeted the entire country, you are right. And secondly, they are targeting Pakistan army specifically. You were very right, as you said previously, they were talking about militant groups taking over Pakistan. Now they're not talking about that, because since 2001, they have been creating this propaganda that Pakistani state and its nuclear weapons are going to fall into the hands of the terrorists. the terrorist, which the Americans and CIA and Joint Special Operations Command JSOC was launching from Afghanistan themselves. And they were making Hollywood movies giving the perception that Pakistani nukes are going to fall into the wrong hands and American Green Berets and special forces are moving in, entering into warehouses and picking up Pakistani nukes. That kind of bullshit. They were actually predictive programming. They were creating the perception globally that this is how they're going to do with Pakistan. CIA had an assessment that by 2015, Pakistani state will collapse. That is why they had removed Musharraf, because he was still holding the country together. They brought in democracy. They brought in Zardari and Nawaz, who on one hand economically destroyed the country, and on second hand, the Pakistan was literally sent to dogs. The entire Pakistan was suffering from terrorism, suicide bombings, and that was the internal security crisis which was creating the global perception and diplomatic environment that Pakistani nukes are about to fall into the wrong hands. But Pakistan army fought back. Pakistan army held the line. We regrouped, reorganized, counterattacked, took Swat, took tribal areas, defeated TTP, pushed them back to Afghanistan. Almost 90% terrorism was crushed in Pakistan. 10% remained because still Afghanistan was their base area and they could operate from there. So now the Americans cannot build this narrative that the Pakistani nukes are about to fall into the hands of TTP or BLA, because their major power has been crushed. So now they are targeting Pakistan army itself. You can see that in Pakistan also, within the country, a most venomous campaign against the armed forces is being launched nowadays. Every political party is against Pakistan army right now. Political party and their followers. There's not a single political party in Pakistan which is supporting Pakistan army in these times.
They actually have the same narrative which the Americans had in since 2001. They're actually having the same narrative.
One could argue and blame the lead policies of the Pakistan army also. They have actually played into the hands of this information war and narrative building, and they have not been able to be proactive in responding to this information war. But that's a separate debate. But the fact is, on one hand, the entire country, within the political party, the narrative is strongly anti-army. And now, internationally, they are targeting Pakistan army as a rogue force. They have presented a resolution in the US Congress that Pakistan army should be declared a terrorist organization for committing genocide in East Pakistan in 1971. So that is another axis of attack. And you can see it's very determined and focused attack on the Pakistani armed forces. They cannot see the RSS terrorism in India. They are completely ignoring the RSS Hindutva Zionism in their plan of Muslim genocide. Every analyst and thinker in the world is saying that India is on the cusp of a Muslim genocide, that 250 million Muslims would face, unbelievable biblical slaughter in the coming weeks and months. Nobody's bothered about that. India is not the dangerous place for them, according to Mr. Biden. India is not a dangerous place for minorities or Christians or Dalits or other low scheduled castes. But Pakistan is the most dangerous place, because Israelis want Biden to say that. And Biden, you know that. The man is a wind talker. He talks in the air. He sees ghosts. He's a demented, completely, what would I say? His dashboard is fried, I call it. He can't even think properly. So this man is not speaking for himself. It's the strong American, Israeli, Jewish lobby inside America that is controlling the US foreign policy now, using the American power and the Indian power to try to destroy the greatest threat the Jewish state feels for itself. That is an Islamic country with nuclear weapons. So at all cost, no matter what, even if they had to burn the entire Asia for it, Israelis cannot tolerate Pakistan having nuclear weapons. And they will use the American muscle and the Indian military to do this. And right now, when the whole world is already in turmoil and on the edge of a world war, this is the most ideal time for them to wage an invasion on Pakistan. And Pakistanis should be very, very concerned at this, because the political discourse and leadership quality in Pakistan and the economic crisis and the disharmony and disunity in the country right now is actually alarming. While our enemies are so single-mindedly, determinedly focused, like they were in East Pakistan in 71, it was not just a military diplomacy or military strategy that won them the war. First, they had won on the information war axis, on the psychological warfare axis, on the diplomatic axis, on isolating Pakistani state from the rest of the world. And only then they were able to achieve the battlefield victory. And right now, all other factors are in place. Only the invasion is remaining. Pakistan is economically challenged. We have very corrupt and poor leadership. We have internal fighting going on, literally on the verge of the civil unrest. And all these signs are dangerous, very, very dangerous. We need a serious course correction. Otherwise, the strategy of the Indians to invade Pakistan and get under our skin, get under our nuclear threshold, enter into our cities, and fight an urban war where we cannot make use of the advantage of having our own nuclear weapons, is the possibility is very real. We need to be very, very concerned and very, very careful. Ji Naveed.
So American, Israelis, and Indians, this triangle, since they annexed Indian occupied Kashmir, I would say the what they say the Union rule in the Indian occupied Kashmir. After that incident, the Americans and Israelis have been massively training the Indians. They are having, you remember, they had this exercise in Rajasthan on our borders of, and then this month they are having a mountain brigade exercise also with the U.S. commandos. Why are Israelis and Americans so keen in training the Indians, and that also in such a haste?
You see, I explained to you this. This is exactly the triad of threat that Pakistan faces. Any war that we are going to fight now is not going to be against India alone. It's going to be directly against the Americans and the Israelis. And it's not just that they will provide intelligence or weapons or equipment to the Indian army. I very strongly believe that Americans and Israelis will actually fight alongside the Indians. The Americans, their satellites, all their intelligence gathering assets, the entire intelligence gathering setup that the Indian army now has is actually run by the Israelis themselves. Israeli commander-in-chief had actually visited Kashmir just a few months back. Israeli commandos operate with the Indian commandos and Indian army in Indian occupied Kashmir. They were flying against us when the Balakot strike took place and we shot them down. Because in the past also, it's Pakistan that has been going on the borders of Israel to take on the Israelis. Pakistan, if you know this, that Pakistan is the only air force in the Muslim world which have shot down Israeli aircraft in air-to-air combat. In fact, Pakistan is the only air force in the Muslim world which have shot down the Indian aircraft, the Soviet aircraft, and the Israeli aircraft in air-to-air combat. So Pakistanis have been going to Jordan, to Syria, to Iraq, to Egypt, and fighting against the Israelis and shooting them down. And our anti-aircraft guns were actually defending those countries against the Israeli attacks. So very naturally, it's understandable that while Israel will never say publicly that Pakistan is our enemy, they have been saying Iran is our enemy, all other countries and Hezbollah and Hamas and everything is their enemy. But you see, the Israel always maintain a very reconciliatory tone towards Pakistan. They actually want Pakistan to recognize them. They actually want Pakistani. They are collecting Americans from all over the world and calling them Pakistanis and bringing them to Israel, giving the perception that the Pakistani state is about to recognize Israel. Israel actually, diplomatically, they want to come close to us. But that's only a deception. Behind the scenes, they are the biggest enemies we face on this planet, bigger than the Indians. Because Indians we can handle. But the Israelis have the potential to deploy Americans against us. And that creates a bigger problem for us. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Not just that they're going to push the Americans, they're actually going to join them also. So any war which Pakistan is going to face in the future is not going to be against Indians alone. We will be fighting the Americans and Israelis together. So that is something Pakistan defense planners should prepare themselves for. It's going to be a long haul war. It's not going to be a 17 days or 20 days war. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. The war is going to run for years. And if a world war breaks out, then you expect it. Then you know that's going to be probably in decades. So this is the kind of environment we are living in right now. While the world is being destroyed economically through famines, human migrations, lockdowns, diseases, jabs, vaccines, well, why not add a nuclear war into the mix as well and do the land grab, which Israel and India wants to do? Israel wants to expand in the greater Middle East, create greater Israel. India wants to expand in South Asia, create greater Akhand Bharat. And for both of them, Pakistan is the only stumbling block. Pakistan is the power that stops greater Israel from expanding. Pakistan is the power that stops Hindutva, greater Hindu Rashtra or greater Hindu India from expanding. So naturally, you should, it doesn't take rocket science to understand that Pakistan is actually the existential threat for both India and Israel. And there are both these powers are going to use America to achieve their objective. Israel will fight to the last American and last Indian, and Indians feel that they can exploit this weakness of Israelis and Americans against Pakistan to their own advantage. So that's the nexus. That's the triad of threat that Pakistan faces today. Ginavi.
Ji sir, I will club two questions together as we are behind schedule. So I just want to ask you that when this Ashraf Ghani's government in Afghanistan, it went and Taliban came in, do you think right now we are facing the same scenario as CIA and RAW are very active collaborating against Pakistan interest and are funding both armed insurgencies in Pakistan like BLA and TTP, and also they are funding the political treacheries within Pakistan? So does this mean that we have like failed in something that they have restarted their attempts in this?
You see, what is happening in Iran right now? You know that Iranian government had their own policies, had their own problems, they had their own issues, but they had it for the last 40, 50 years since they came into power. But what is happening right now is an orchestrated, foreign-sponsored, CIA, Mossad-sponsored uprising, exploiting the local weaknesses and fractures within the Iranian society. That's what happens. Sometimes the fractures do not exist, so they fabricate it. And sometimes they exploit the existing fractures within a society and the government. So what they are doing in Iran is exactly being repeated in Pakistan also. Iran is the regime. Israel cannot let them have nuclear weapons. And Pakistan is a country which already have nuclear weapons. So Israel destroying Iran is a preemptive war. Destroying Pakistan is a war of necessity. So they are funding everything in Pakistan also. Every political party, every separatist and terrorist group, every media house is funded by the CIA and the Mossad and the Indians. And the fact is that they are able to exploit the internal fractures within our society is simply because we do not have a leadership today. Pakistan is in political turmoil. We are practically a headless country. The country's state bank has been mortgaged to the IMF. So we are economically, we are totally controlled by Geeta Gopinath, another Indian working in the IMF. I mean, she is controlling our finances and the state bank. And while Pakistani Foreign Office refuses to recognize the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, we should have recognized them. We should have asked them to open their embassy, signed agreements with them, given them respect, made them responsible for controlling their territory, and given them support. We did not do that. We left the vacuum after the American exit. We left the vacuum open. So Indians have started to refill it. CIA, before they left, created ISIS and Daesh in Afghanistan, which have become a crisis for Islamic Emirate also. Pakistan could have supported Islamic Emirate in crushing Daesh, and we should have asked them to crush TTP. We did not do it. We started negotiating peace talks with TTP instead of crushing them. So blunders after blunders. It's a systematic goof up that we are doing as a state. You cannot blame a man, individual for these blunders. The entire state, all its organs, all its institutions, entire leadership is responsible for the position we are in. When the Imran government was there, Modi annexed Kashmir. That should have been a red line. We should have gone for a limited war in Kashmir at that time. We did not. We allowed them to crush the Kashmiri resistance totally, change the demography completely, build the defensive line on the line of control so strong that now Pakistan cannot penetrate it. And we allowed Indians to build up their army along Gilgit, Baltistan, and Skardu, which is now an invasion level army. And now we will have to fight the war not in the Indian occupied Kashmir, but in Gilgit, Baltistan, and Azad Kashmir. We did not take the war to them, so they'll bring the war to us now. And we will lose territory in the beginning because they will
Ji, sir,
come with a
I would
momentum.
like to ask one question over here because it's the same topic which you just said. God forbid if Indian attacks is basically what we analyze is it's for the northern Pakistan, Gilgit Baltistan. They are keeping their parliamentary seats, the Senate seats in their parliament since 1960, and AJK also. So we know that they want to show their people back home that they have retained the Kashmir. They have taken the Pakistani Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. So they will be going for that for sure. But God forbid if we lose, like I mean, it's just a what if scenario. If we lose Gilgit Baltistan and AJK, will Americans and Israelis and some of our Arab friends and Europeans blackmail us to sign the ceasefire truce with India, like what Israel has been doing with the Arab countries? Do you fear that? I mean, it can
You
happen
see,
like that.
if countries do not get what they deserve, they get what they negotiate. And you negotiate from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. So if the Indians, God forbid, enter Pakistan and capture our territory, that will be the time when we will be in a position of weakness. And to secure our territories back, if there is a peace agreement, if there's a negotiation, if there's a discussion, you can be sure that it will be directed towards Pakistan's nuclear program. The world powers, if they step in, they will step in on the side of India. And they will insist that Pakistan should surrender its nuclear weapons if we want our territories back. So that will be the cost you'll have to pay for the stupidity today, for not preparing for the war that is imminent. We will be pressurized to surrender our nuclear weapons if we want our territory back. And if we do that, we will not even get, we will lose our nuclear weapons, we'll lose our security, and we will not get our territory back. In fact, we will lose more territory. Look at Ukraine today. They forced Ukraine to surrender the nuclear weapons good about 25, 30 years ago. And they promised Ukraine security against the Russian invasion. Ukraine surrendered its nuclear weapons, and now when the Russians invaded, the entire world abandoned Ukraine. I mean, they're supporting them with few anti-tank missiles and drones and artillery and shells and all. But officially, NATO and the Americans have not gotten involved in Ukraine to defend Ukraine. 10 million Ukrainians, Europeans, have been made refugees, homeless. They're spread all over Europe, living in tents right now. Well, just a few weeks ago, they were living in their palatial villas and homes and apartments in Ukraine. So this what happens when you surrender your security and nuclear weapons on the promises of the large powers who blackmail you into surrendering your weapon systems. So if we lose our territory, God forbid, this is the condition they will put in front of us to regain, to get back our lands. But again, as we said, it is said that once you start accepting humiliation to avoid a war, what you get is humiliation and war both. So we did this blunder in 2019 when the Indians occupied Kashmir, and we accepted the humiliation instead of going to war. Now we have humiliation and war upon us both. And now I personally have no doubt that in the long term, once the Indians enter Pakistan, in the long term, we will be able to crush them, push them back, destroy them. We know we will be able to fall back, regroup, reorganize, and counterattack. But we will take heavy losses. When you don't prepare in times of peace, then you bleed in times of war. They say it's always good to be a warrior in a garden than to be a bloody gardener in war. Our nation is behaving like gardeners in war. We can see all around us, the entire world is going into war zone. Countries are preparing for war. Countries are preparing for nuclear war. Every country is refurbishing its weapon systems and preparing and opening up the warehouses and taking out the guns and equipment, preparing their nation. Every country in the world is doing it now, except Pakistan. And we are the most threatened. We are the most threatened country in the world today. We are not the most dangerous country. We are the most threatened country. Because Israel, Americans, and the Indians have converged right now in a grand alliance, triad alliance, against pinpointedly focused against Pakistan and Pakistani nukes and Pakistan army. And the information war globally that you can see is not targeting the Islamic ideology or not targeting the political parties or the Pakistani state. They are targeting Pakistan army and Pakistani nukes. Because they know that these two are the center of gravity that are holding this country together. You create hatred in the nation, in the people against the army, and you take away its nuclear weapons, then Pakistani state will exist no more. And they are coming for this. And we need to be prepared and fight back. But we are not prepared and we are not fighting back because we don't have a leadership right now which can fight back. The surrender started in 2007, actually. They blame Musharraf for it, that Musharraf sided with the Americans and allowed them everything. Yes, he made mistakes, but there were certain red lines even he did not cross. But now they are being crossed in the period of democracy. This democracy has ruined us totally, completely ruined us. And now we await a fate similar to Ukraine. That's different, that we are not Ukraine and India is not Russia. We'll beat the pulp out of them, beat the crap out of them once they enter into Pakistan. But yes, we will take losses, severe losses. And nation needs to be mentally prepared for that.
Jesus, so you think that definitely we are heading towards a long urban war with India? And but my question is that will we able to stop them at borders like we did in 65 and 71, or it's going to be a pure urban war like Syria and Yemen and other countries where we've seen that?
I think you should look at Ukraine war very, very closely. Whatever is going to happen is going to be an identical copy of Ukraine. You cannot stop them at the borders now. And the amount of weapons they have accumulated, the force they have, the strategy they have built, and the inbuilt weaknesses in the Pakistani state, the lack of leadership, the lack of infrastructure, the economic collapse, everything put together, you can see the outcome of what they are planning to do. And that is, we will have to fight within our own cities like Ukrainians are doing now. It's not going to be a 17 or 20-day war. No world power is going to come in between to stop it. We'll have to fight on our own. It's going to be a long haul. It's going to be bloody and messy. And we will take severe losses in the beginning. We have to be mentally prepared for that. Because the way Indians are single-mindedly, pinpointedly focused against Pakistan, the way they have the backing, the way they have the confidence, they are full of arrogance right now. They've got the money, they've got the backing, they've got the weapons, they've got the numbers, and they've sensed the weakness within the Pakistani state. And for 1,000 years, they've been waiting for this moment to take revenge of their humiliation. So this arrogance of power and this ideology of trying to create a greater India or a Khand Bharat and a Hindu Rashtra, simultaneously they'll go for a genocide of Muslims inside India and an invasion of Pakistan. And they plan to keep it conventional. And they are in a hurry because they are buying all these military equipment under emergency procurement laws. I mean, you don't have to, they're not tendering for them. They're just going and paying cash and picking them up. They are in a hurry. And you can see that. And all their military preparations are now almost complete. All they need is the right amount of anarchy in Pakistan, which is not yet there. They're trying to push it. They're trying to create a civil war. They're trying to create a war between provinces fight with each other, or economic collapse takes place, or people rise against the armed forces, or there's an insurgency or terrorism, rise in insurgency. So they are trying to create the right amount of anarchy and civil unrest, which is not yet there. Because whatever it is, despite all the power and the force and diplomatic isolation they're trying to create against Pakistan, we are dealing with a bloody coward enemy. Indians are very, very scared of entering into Pakistan. They're afraid, actually. And the baggage of history is too strong on them. We have ruled over them for 1,000 years. They suffer from an inferiority complex. They are terribly scared of fighting a Muslim army. And so many times, I mean, if I was an Indian general, I would have invaded. And Pakistanis are certainly not prepared. But why are Indians not doing it? That's their lack of self confidence. That's the confusion within their ranks. That's they're looking at other powers to fight for them, making sure that Americans and the Israelis do some more, bring some more pressure on Pakistan and wait for some more time where Pakistan faces more anarchy so that they don't have to face the resistance that they will face. Pakistanis are all warrior nations. I mean, we might have our own weaknesses. We might be casual, we might be lethargic, we might be reactive, we might be defensive. But when it comes to fight for our survival, we all fight like tigers. That's our history. That's what we do. Even if it's a cricket match, we do it like this, or it's a battlefield. When it comes for our survival and honor, this nation gets united and they fight like tigers. And we are in martial nation, as I said. Every house has got a weapon. If we raise a civilian militia in Pakistan, we can easily raise something like 20 million fighters. I mean, that's a hell lot of rifles to have. 20 million fighters will support Pakistan, 500,000 Pakistan army. And Indians will have a very serious trouble in our cities. Yes, they'll do some damage. But I can guarantee you that any Indian entering Pakistan will not be able to go back. This time, Pakistanis don't plan to take any prisoners. There'll be no prisoners this time. This is going to be a
Yes, so
savage
that is
war.
the reason they are always cold feet. They got cold feet in 2019. And that is why the Americans and Israelis have been pushing them, training them, giving them equipment, giving them all the support. But still, the Indians get cold feet. But now we have to be realistic also. The kind of preparation which they have done, I think they are now, they have gained a lot of confidence in that. And as you said, the situation which is going on within Pakistan, the political and the other things. So it gives them a little bit of motivation. One thing I want to tell you that, as you said that, and it is very clear that Biden is not saying anything just like that. I mean, he's been programmed to say whatever he says. And even today, if you see that they have changed their the foreign office guy who gives the briefing, and now they have put an Indian. The guy who came today was a Gujarati, is a Gujarati Indian, very close to Amit Shah, and he was the one who was saying, "No, we did not mean that. Biden did not mean that." So this is another indication and intent of the Americans what they have given, that they mean what Biden was saying. So I think it is actually correct that Biden is actually giving a final nod to Indians to launch the attack, and it's upon Indians to gain some courage and do that. The last question, sir. India and Pakistan, it has been like in debates, and the Simpson and all these things, that the flashpoint of World War III will be a war between India and Pakistan. Do you think it is still the same flashpoint, or the World War III has already started?
You see, World War III has already started in 2020. People assume that this war, World War III, will begin with a nuclear war. No, it began with the COVID lockdown. It began when they started to make people sick through social isolation and face masks, and then making them mentally retarded and putting them into a psychological trauma of, of scaring them of a flu, and then making them surrender their freedoms and honor and liberties to a bloody jab, which was not even designed for it, which was a completely designed to alter their DNA and make them so sick and control their behavior through it that they're not able to resist what's coming to them. So, whatever happened in 2020 was the beginning of the final Third World War. It has different dimensions. One dimension is to destroy the society, destroy the small businesses, destroy the social order, destroy the education. That has already been done when they locked down the schools and shut down the businesses and made people sick by injecting them with the bloody poison. So that part is done. The second was destroy the supply line of the food supply. They are destroying the food processing plants globally. The war in Ukraine and this is completely is going to disturb the global wheat supply. The weather engineering and how they have weaponized the weather is creating droughts and famines and floods and tornadoes in different parts of the world, further destroying the food supply. Then they started burning the food processing plants and killing the cattle and the sheep and the poultry. Everything is part of the world war that is being waged against humans. We are into a very, very angry world. Look at Europe. What's happening in Europe now? This war in Ukraine has completely shut down Europe. European industries are on the verge of collapse because they cannot afford the rising gas and energy prices. They're actually pushing Europe back into the 19th century, burning wood and coal. So whatever is happening is part of the world war. And if you talk, and as far as the military hostilities are concerned, even they began in Ukraine a few months ago. And only they're going to expand. Only they're going to multiply in different regions. Almost you had a nuclear war in Taiwan. And that axis is still there, still simmering, still burning. It can ignite any moment. And the third nuclear axis is Pakistan and India. So we are already into a world war. We are already into an environment where global societies are collapsing, countries are collapsing, governments are collapsing. And you find the governments crashing down upon their own people, like they are an occupation force trying to crush a resistance. Like, look at what's happening in China. I mean, the entire Chinese cities with population larger than some European countries are being shut down. And people are locked up in homes. There are crises actually in China, and because the dystopian, draconian, new world order, the electronic surveillance system that they want to bring for the world is being experimented in China first. China is fully on board this new world order bullshit, new world, great reset, and the building better thing. So while it seems that the countries are against each other, the actions that their leadership and political governments are taking tell you they are on the same agenda of World Economic Forum, of destroying the world, of reducing the population, of destroying whatever is there so that they can build back better. So it doesn't matter which axis they use, food genocide or human migrations or a nuclear war or a conventional war or a supply chain disaster or disease or jabs, everything is part of this larger world war that is being waged against humanity now. We are all in it together, irrespective of which region or religion we belong to. Every human being is suffering, and every human being will suffer because these globalists who are running this world today have decided to reduce the carbon from this world, and you are the carbon they want to reduce. Ji,
Ji sir, we are done with the questions and the session. But now I will request people who want to ask questions. You can ask in Urdu. आप लोग उर्दू के अंदर भी क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं अपना, और उर्दू में भी आपको सर जवाब दे देंगे. There are few requests to me already, and anyone who wants to ask a question, please send me the speaker request. I will unmute you. अभी सबसे पहले नुमान, I'm unmuting you, तो आप अपना क्वेश्चन जो है सर से पूछ लीजिएगा. Just a moment. Jinwan, I think your mic is on. आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से. I think Numan disconnected, so I'll ask Hamad. Okay. Ji Hamad, your mic is on. If you want to ask some question, you can ask. There's some issue going on. Whoever I approve just vanished. So let me make two of them together. Numan, I will give you again because I don't know what's happening. Okay, Ji Numan, you can ask your question. I think your mic is on now.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम. मेरा माइक ऑन है जनाब, मैं बात कर सकता
जी? प्लीज आस्क योर क्वेश्चन जी, अपना सवाल कीजिए.
बहुत एहतराम के साथ जनाब, आप सब लोगों को सलाम, दुआ और अर्ज अदब. جناب میرا زید حامد صاحب سے یہ سوال ہے کہ اس بلوچستان خطے میں جب ہم رہ رہے ہیں، ان حالات کو دیکھتے ہوئے آپ کا یہ تمام بیان سن رہا ہوں، اس کو نظر رکھتے ہوئے کہ اس وقت یہ بلوچستان میں جیسے حالات چل رہے ہیں، ہم یہاں پہ اس بلوچستان میں ہمارے لیے کیا ہے، ہم کیا کر سکتے ہیں، ہم کیا کریں گے؟ دیکھو یہاں پہ اگر حالات تھوڑی سی بگڑ بھی جائے، مجھے تو یہ کنفرم لگتا ہے کہ یہاں میرے آس پاس ماحول میں میرے ساتھ رہتے ہوئے آس پاس لوگ یہاں تو سب بالکل ایسے ہے کہ ہمیں مانتے ہی نہیں ہے، ہماری کوئی بات سنتے ہی نہیں ہے، ہمارے اتنے خلاف ہے کہ حد سے زیادہ۔ تو میرا بیسٹ کوشچن صرف یہی ایک ہے کہ مجھے کوئی اوپینین مل جائے کہ ہم اس حالات میں کیسے اپنے آپ کو سنبھالیں گے اور ہم کیا کریں گے، ہمیں کیا کرنا چاہیے، ہمارا اقدام کیا ہونا چاہیے۔ تھینک یو سر۔
جزاک اللہ خیر فار آسکنگ۔ اب سنیے، جو مسئلے آپ نے بلوچستان کے بتائے ہیں، ایگزیکٹلی یہی مسئلہ سندھ میں بھی ہے۔ آپ انٹیریئر سندھ میں جا کے دیکھیے وہاں لوگوں کا کیا حال ہے۔ وہاں بھی سندھو دیش کی تحریک دشمن سپورٹ کر رہا ہے، وہاں بھی غربت کا، معاشی تباہی کا جو عالم ہے، جو سیلاب وہاں پہ آیا۔ یہی مسئلہ آپ ٹرائبل ایریاز میں جا کے دیکھیے، وہاں پہ ایک آواز اٹھ رہی ہے کہ پچھلے 20 30 40 سال سے ہمارے علاقوں میں جنگیں ہو رہی ہیں، ہم کہاں پہ جائیں، کدھر جائیں، ریاست پاکستان ہمیں ہمیں بچائے اس ساری دہشت گردی سے جو ہمارے یہاں ہو رہی ہے۔ آپ نے پچھلے دنوں سوات میں دیکھا کہ کتنا بڑا جلوس نکالا گیا کہ دہشت گردی کے خلاف۔ کوئی ایک خطہ پاکستان کا ایسا نہیں ہے جو یہ کہے کہ صرف میرے ساتھ ظلم ہو رہا ہے یا زیادتی ہو رہی ہے۔ یہ پورا پاکستان تکلیف میں ہے۔ اور ایک بات بالکل یاد رکھیے گا کہ آپ کی پناہ گاہ جو ہے، جو اللہ نے آپ کے لیے پناہ گاہ بنائی ہے، وہ پاکستان ہے۔ اس کے علاوہ دنیا کا کوئی اور ملک آپ کو پناہ نہیں دے گا۔ اب آپ یورپ بھی نہیں جا سکتے، امریکہ اور کینیڈا نہیں جا سکتے، آسٹریلیا نہیں جا سکتے، آپ کو بھارت مدد نہیں کرے گا، آپ کو اسرائیل اور امریکہ مدد نہیں کرے گا۔ استعمال کر سکتا ہے ہمارے لوگوں کو پاکستان کی ریاست تباہ کرنے کے لیے۔ یہی باتیں اس نے شام میں کہی تھیں۔ شام کے لوگوں سے کہا تھا کہ بشار الاسد کی حکومت تم پہ ظلم کرتی ہے، آؤ بغاوت کر دیتے ہیں، جنگ کرتے ہیں، سیریا سے نکل کے الگ ہو جائیں گے۔ کیا حال ہوا سیریا کا؟ نکل کے الگ تو نہیں ہوئے، لیکن پورا سیریا کھنڈر بن گیا۔ جو کچھ تھا لوگوں کے پاس وہ بھی ختم ہو گیا۔ کروڑوں کی تعداد میں آبادی ہجرت کر کے ترکی میں، شام کے دوسرے حصوں میں، پوری دنیا میں بیچارے سمندر میں ہزاروں کی تعداد میں ڈوب گئے یورپ جانے کے چکر میں۔ جو اپنے ہنستے بستے آباد گھر کو آگ لگا دے دشمن کے کہنے پر، یہ کہہ کر کہ ہمیں یہاں پہ ہم خوش نہیں ہیں، بھائی آپس میں جو مرضی ناراضگی کریں، گھر کو آگ نہیں لگا۔ دشمن یہی چاہتا ہے کہ گھر کو آگ لگائی جائے۔ پاکستان میں بیرونی دہشت گردی ہے، پی ایل اے کی ہو یا ٹی ٹی پی کی ہو یا سندھو دیش کی ہو، چاہے یہ جموں کشمیر لبریشن فرنٹ والے ہوں، چاہے وہ کوئی پاکستان کے اندر اور جگہوں کے اوپر بغاوتوں کی تحریکیں ہوں۔ پاکستان کی ریاست غلطیاں کر رہی ہے، اس میں کوئی شبہ نہیں ہے، لیکن پاکستان کی سیاسی جماعتیں، پاکستان کے پولیٹیشنز، پاکستان کی حکومت، کیا صوبائی حکومت بالکل ٹھیک کام کرتی ہے، کرپشن نہیں کرتی؟ پاکستان جو پیسہ اس کو ملتا ہے وہ محبت اور پیار کے ساتھ اپنے صوبے پر لگاتی ہے؟ ایسا نہیں ہے۔ زرداری 50 سال سے سندھ پہ حکومت کر رہی ہے پیپلز پارٹی، انہوں نے کیا حشر کر دیا سندھ کا۔ تو یہ پوری ریاست اور اس کا نظام اور یہ سیاسی جماعتیں سب مل کر ریاست پاکستان کو تباہ کر رہی ہیں، اور کس کے کہنے پر؟ دشمنوں کے کہنے پر۔ اب پاکستان کی ریاست یا تو خود اس کے جو طاقتور ادارے ہیں، سپریم کورٹ ہے، پاک فوج ہے، اگر یا تو خود اس نظام کو ٹھیک کریں، جو نہیں کر رہے یہ، تو پھر آپ کو باہر سے سزا لگے گی، آپ کے اوپر ہلاکو خان اور مودی آئے گا، اور وہ آنے کے بعد اس قوم کو احساس ہوگا کہ ہم اس پاکستان کو سمجھتے تھے کہ ہمارے ساتھ زیادتی ہو رہی ہے، ہمیں حقوق نہیں دیے جا رہے۔ وہ جو ہندو آ کے کرے گا نا، پھر لوگوں کو پاکستان کی قدر آئے گی۔ بہتر ہے پہلے قدر کر لیں،
السلام علیکم
کیونکہ اب…
سر۔
جی وعلیکم السلام۔
آئی ایم نعمان احمد سر۔ میرا کوشچن یہ ہے کہ کین یو تھنک کہ پاکستان ول گیٹ بیک دی occupied territory of Jammu Kashmir without the help of China? Because کیونکہ it is seeming like that Pakistan is waiting for the war between China and India. اسی کے درمیان یہ جو ایشو ہے اس کو ریزالو کر لیا جائے۔
اب یہ وقت بہت پہلے گزر چکا ہے، یہ وقت 1962 میں ہو سکتا تھا، 71 میں ہو سکتا تھا، 1980s میں ہو سکتا تھا جب کشمیر کے اندر ایک تحریک آزادی چل رہی تھی۔ لیکن اب یہ وقت گزر گیا ہے کہ پاکستان کشمیر کے لیے اکیلے الگ سے جنگ کر کے کشمیر بھارت سے آزاد کرا لے۔ اب بھارت اور پاکستان کی خوفناک بڑی جنگ ہوگی، یہ غزوہ ہند ہوگی۔ اس میں اب فیصلہ ہوگا، یہ آر یا پار جنگ ہے، اور اس جنگ کے نتیجے میں کشمیر آزاد ہوگا، کہ کشمیر ہی نہیں، انشاءاللہ دہلی بھی آزاد ہوگا۔ پھر یہ جنگ اب بالکل سر پہ رکھی ہوئی ہے. جو غلطیاں ماضی میں ہم کر چکے ہیں اس کا کفارہ اب یہ دینا پڑے گا کہ اب ہمیں لاکھوں کروڑوں جانوں کی قربانی دے کر کشمیر اور بھارت آزاد کرانا ہوگا. چاہے بھارت کے مسلمانوں کی مدد کرنی ہو یا کشمیر آزاد کرانا، کام پاکستان نہیں کرنا ہے. اور کوئی باہر کی طاقت آپ کی مدد نہیں کرے گی اگر آپ خود لڑنے کے لیے تیار نہ ہو تو. ہمیں مدد مل سکتی ہے چین سے یا ترکی سے اور ایران سے اور افغان طالبان سے، لیکن پہلے ہم بھی تو اپنے پاؤں پر کھڑے ہونا. اور ہم اگر نہیں کھڑے ہوتے تو اللہ ہمیں مجبور کرے گا. اللہ نے تو اپنا کام کروانا ہے، جو فیصلے وہ کر چکا ہے وہ ہو کر رہیں گے. غزوہ ہند ہونا ہے، اور یہ غزوہ ہند ہماری صفائی بھی کرے گا. پاکستان کے اندر جو غلیظ نظام اور یہ کرپٹ اور ناپاک لوگ بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں، یہ پہلے حملے میں ہی، دشمن کے پہلے طیاروں کے حملوں میں ہی یہ سب فرار ہو جائیں گے یا مارے جائیں گے. پھر صرف شیر کے بچے کھڑے رہ جائیں گے جو اس پاک سرزمین کے لیے، سیدی رسول اللہ کی ڈیوٹی کے لیے جہاد کرتے ہیں، قربانی دیتے ہیں. پاکستان کی عزت اور آبرو کی حفاظت نہ صرف حفاظت کریں گے بلکہ اندر جا کے علاقے آزاد بھی کرائیں گے. تو تھوڑا صبر، وقت نزدیک ہے. جنگ دشمن شروع کرے گا، اللہ کے حکم سے ختم ہم کریں گے انشاءاللہ اس کو، لیکن
جی
قربانی
اب
دینی پڑے
نجم
گی.
آپ نے اپنا کوشچن کرنا ہے، پھر عباسی نجم کے بعد آپ کریں گے اور پھر حمزہ کرے گا. آپ تینوں کا اپروو ہوا ہے لیکن باری باری کیجیے گا. نجم پہلے آپ کوشچن کر لیں اپنا.
السلام علیکم سر.
جی نجم بسم اللہ، کیری آن، جلدی کیجیے.
مغربی دنیا میں جو مسلمان پاکستانی قوم پرست رہتے ہیں وہ واپس آنا چاہتے ہیں. یہاں پہ جب وہ واپس آتے ہیں کافی انفورسیبل سرکمسٹانسز ان کو فیس کرنے پڑتے ہیں. آپ کی کیا ایڈوائس ہے کہ وہ پاکستان میں کیسے ری سیٹل ہو سکتے ہیں؟ دوسرا میرا یہ سوال ہے کہ پنجاب حکومت میں اسلحہ کا لائسنس لینا بہت زیادہ مشکل ہے، تو اس کے علاوہ جو پنجاب میں رہ رہے ہیں وہ کیسے اپنے آپ کو مسلح تیاری کر سکتے ہیں انڈین اوفینسز کے لیے؟ شکریہ.
دیکھیے جہاں تک آپ نے بات کی کہ جو یورپ میں مسلمان رہ رہے ہیں پاکستان آتے ہیں تو بڑی مشکل ہوتی ہے، کیا یورپ میں آسانی ہے وہ آپ کے لیے؟ کیا یورپ میں جب آپ کوئلہ اور لکڑی جلا رہے ہوں گے اور بجلی کا بل 10 گنا زیادہ دے رہے ہوں گے تو وہ آسانی ہے کیا؟ پورا یورپ جو ایٹمی جنگ میں داخل ہونے والا ہے وہ آسانی ہے کیا؟ کس نے آپ سے کہا کہ جب آپ ہجرت کریں گے اللہ کے لیے اور پاکستان کے لیے تو آپ کو آگے لوگ پھولوں کی سیج سجائیں گے اور آپ کو پکے پکائے کھانے دیں گے اور آپ کو پورا آپ کو سیٹل کر کے دیں گے؟ ہجرت ہمیشہ ایسے ہی ہوتی ہے کہ جس میں آپ کو اللہ پہ توکل کر کے ایک جگہ چھوڑ کر اللہ کے لیے ہجرت کرنی پڑتی ہے. ہمارے بڑوں نے جب 50 لاکھ کروڑوں لوگوں نے پاکستان بنتے وقت ہجرت کی تو کس کے پاس گارنٹی تھی کہ ہم پاکستان جائیں گے تو ہمیں یہاں پہ خوشحالی ملے گی اور ہم کو یہاں پہ بہت اچھی نوکریاں اور جابز ملیں گی اور لوگ ہمیں عزت دیں گے؟ سب نے اللہ کے لیے ہجرت کی، سب پاکستان آئے، کچھ نہیں تھا ان کے پاس، پھٹے پرانے کپڑوں میں آئے، بمشکل جان بچا کر، آدھی خاندان کٹوا کر. تو جو پاکستانی رہتے ہیں یورپ میں، آپ لوگ ایک آسان اور اچھی زندگی کے عادی ہو گئے. اب یہ توقع نہ کریں کہ اسی طرح کی زندگی آپ کو پاکستان میں ملے گی. جو تکلیف پاکستان میں ہے، جو سکون، جو آرام پاکستان میں ہے، جو مشکلات ہیں، وہ سب آپ سب کے ساتھ مل کر برداشت کریں گے. اور اس کو آپ نے ہی آ کے ٹھیک کرنا. یہ نہ توقع کریں کہ یہاں کے لوگ ٹھیک کریں گے پاکستان کو، پھر آپ باہر سے مزے سے آئیں گے اور یہاں کے پارٹی کریں گے. ایسا نہیں ہے. پاکستان آئے تو اس نیت سے آئے کہ ہم پاکستان کو ٹھیک کرنے جا رہے ہیں. آپ وہاں بھی میدان جنگ ہے یورپ. اب یورپ میں آپ کو کوئی سکون نہیں ملے گا. جو آپ کو لنڈن اور پیرس اور فرانس اور ان کی سڑکوں کے اوپر جو پتھراؤ اور آگ لگاؤ ہو رہا ہے وہ پاکستان سے کم ہے. وہاں زیادہ ہے اس وقت پاکستان سے یورپ میں جو تباہی مچی ہوئی ہے ابھی، اور آگے مزید بڑھے گی. وہاں جنگیں اور ایٹمی جنگیں آئیں گی. تو جو مشکلات اور پریشانیاں ہیں، جو کچھ ہے، آپ اپنی تقدیر ساتھ لے کر آئیں. آپ یہاں پر آئیں اور پاکستان کو ریبلڈ کریں. یہ توقع نہ کریں کہ پاکستان کوئی اور قربانی دے، کوئی اور ٹھیک کرے اور آپ آ کے صرف پارٹی کریں. ایسا نہیں ہے. یو کم ہیئر، یو فکس پاکستان ود اس. ہم لوگ جو یہاں بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں ہمارے ساتھ مل کر پاکستان ٹھیک کریں. ہم نے مل کر ٹھیک کرنا ہے اس کو. یہ نہیں ہوگا جو لوگ ذرا مشکل ہوئی پاکستان میں بھاگ کے یورپ چلے گئے اور انتظار کرتے رہے کہ کوئی پاکستان ٹھیک کرے گا. یورپ میں مشکل پڑی، بھاگ کے آ گئے یہاں پاکستان، کوئی اور ٹھیک کرے گا، ہم پارٹی کریں گے. ڈزنٹ ہیپن لائک دس. بی اے سولجر آف پاکستان، بی اے سن آف پاکستان. بیٹے بنے پاکستان کے، اینڈ فائٹ اینڈ ڈائی فار پاکستان. آپ اونلی دین یو ول بی این آنریبل مین. ورنہ آپ بھاگتے پھریں گے دنیا میں ادھر سے ادھر. کوئی ملک آپ کو اون نہیں کرے گا، آپ کو صرف پاکستان اون کرے گا. اس کی قدر کریں گے. سب ہلالی پرچم آپ کی واحد نشانی ہے. نو میٹر کتنے پاسپورٹ آپ نے رکھے ہو، عزت آپ کو صرف پاکستان میں ملے گی. اور جہاں تک لائسنس کی بات ہے، چھوڑیں اس بات کو. یہاں پہ آپ بغیر ہتھیار کے بہت ٹریننگ کر سکتے ہیں اپنے آپ کو، اور ہزار طریقے تربیت دینے کے. جب جنگ لگے گی پوری قوم اس وقت تیاری کرے گی. ڈونٹ وری اباؤٹ دیٹ. بہرحال نیکسٹ کوسچن پلیز.
جی عباسی اب آپ کا کوشچن ہے، اس کے بعد حمزہ کا.
جی السلام علیکم زاہد صاحب اور سرائے صاحب، بہت شکریہ، آپ نے بہت اچھا ٹاپک چوائس کیا ہے، اور زاہد احمد صاحب کو اکثر اوقات میں ان کے ٹویٹر پہ پڑھتا رہتا ہوں.
میرے دوست آپ جلدی سے سوال کریں، بسم اللہ خیر سے.
میرا یہ کوشچن ہے زاہد احمد صاحب سے کہ جہاں تک انڈیا سے ہمارے کنسرن ہے سیکورٹی، وہ تو انشاءاللہ ہماری قوم کسی صورت میں اس کو ہر صورت میں ڈیفینڈ کرے گی، اور ان کو کبھی یہ موقع نہیں دے گی کہ وہ اس طرح کی غلطی کریں. جہاں تک ہمارے انٹرنل جو معاملات ہیں، میں زاہد احمد صاحب سے کوشچن کروں گا کہ ہمارا جو پولیٹیکل سسٹم ہے یہ مکمل فیل ہو رہا ہے، اور ابھی اگر عمران خان 2 تہائی اکثریت سے بھی آ جاتے ہیں تو یہ بالکل فیل ہو جائیں گے، حکومت نہیں کر سکیں گے. تو اس کے لیے کیا سسٹم ہونا چاہیے کہ ہم جو ہے وہ آگے کی طرف بڑھ سکیں، کیونکہ یہ الیکشن اور بار بار الیکشن اور یہ 2 تہائی اکثریت اور یہ اس مسئلے کا سلوشن بالکل نہیں ہے.
اس بات کے اوپر ہم پچھلے 15 سال سے بہت دفعہ بات کر چکے ہیں کہ یہ پاکستان کا یہ پولیٹیکل سسٹم، چاہے کوئی پولیٹیکل پارٹی ہو، اس کے پاس کوئی میجورٹی ہو، یہ صرف ملک کو تباہ کرنے کے لیے آئیں گے. اس کا سولوشن یہی ہے کہ آپ کو اس پورے پولیٹیکل سسٹم کو روکنا پڑے گا. یہاں پہ روکنے کا مطلب ہے کہ آپ کو اس کو مکمل تبدیل کرنا ہے، لیکن یہ کرنے کے لیے آپ اس کو اس آئین کے تحت نہیں کر سکتے. اس کے لیے آپ کو انٹروینشن چاہیے، باہر سے کوئی دخل دے. سپریم کورٹ نظریہ ضرورت کے تحت یا پاک فوج مارشل لا لگا کر پہلے اس سسٹم کو روکنا پڑے گا، اور روکنے کے بعد آپ اس کو ریفارم کریں گے، کمپلیٹلی اوور آل کریں گے، تبدیل کریں گے آپ اس کو. شروع میں ہم نے اسی لیے سجیسٹ کیا تھا کہ 3 سال کے لیے ایک ٹیکنوکریٹک محب وطن لوگوں کی ایک حکومت بنا دیں جو اس نظام کو تبدیل کرے، اور نظام کو پولیٹیکل، اکنامک، جوڈیشل پورے سسٹم کو تبدیل کرے، اور اس کے بعد آپ دوبارہ ایک نیا پولیٹیکل پروسیس شروع کریں. چاہے صدارتی نظام ہو، چاہے شرائیت اور صدارتی ہو، چاہے آپ فرانس والا ماڈل لیں، امریکہ والا لیں، ایران والا لیں، چائنا والا لیں، یا خلافت راشدہ کا لیں. وہ سب مل کے اس وقت آپ ڈیسائیڈ کریں گے کہ ہم نے اگلا ماڈل کون سا بنانا ہے. فی الحال ملک کو سٹیبل کرنے کے لیے اور ان سیاسی جماعتوں کو ختم کرنے کے لیے اور اس موروثی سیاست کو ختم کرنے کے لیے کہ جہاں چور اور ڈاکو اور ان کی نسلیں جو ہیں وہ ناپاک اور پلیت لوگ پاکستان پر نسل در نسل حکومت کرتے ہیں، ان سب کو ختم کرنے کے لیے آپ کو ایک ٹیکنوکریٹک گورنمنٹ چاہیے. تمام سیاسی جماعتوں کو ابالش کرنا پڑے گا، ختم کرنا پڑے گا، اور وہ آ کے سخت احتساب کریں، سخت ریفارم کریں، اور پھر آپ آگے چلیں. اگر آپ یہ خود نہیں کریں گے، جو کہ نہیں کر رہا ہے، نہ حکومت کرنا چاہتی ہے، نہ فوج، نہ پارلیمنٹ، نہ پولیٹیکل پارٹیز، نہ جوڈیشری، تو پھر آپ مودی کا انتظار کریں. کیونکہ اسی چیز کو استعمال کر کے ہی اسی تباہی جو مچ رہی ہے جمہوریت کی وجہ سے، اسی کی وجہ سے تو آپ پر حملہ ہوگا، اسی کی وجہ سے دشمن آئے گا اندر. یہی جمہوریت ہے پاکستان میں وہ مشرقی پاکستان والا ماحول پیدا کر رہی ہے. تو دشمن نے پھر آنا ہی آنا. ایک دفعہ جب دشمن آئے گا تو پھر یہ سارا غلیظ نظام اس کے وزن سے تباہ ہوگا. لیکن جا کے اس میں پھر بڑی خوریزی ہے، بڑی تباہی ہے. جب آپ خود ریفارم نہیں کریں گے تو اللہ ہلاکو خان کے ذریعے نظام تبدیل کروائے گا، اور اس کے بعد پھر ایک نئی لیڈرشپ اور نیا نظام نکلے گا. تو آپ ذہنی طور پہ تیار رہیں. چونکہ ہم خود اپنے آپ کو ٹھیک نہیں کر رہے تو پھر فطرت کا تازیانہ جو ہے، اللہ کی مار بہت سخت آنے والی ہے. پھر اللہ ہلاکو خان کے ذریعے کام تو کروائے گا. اس ملک میں نظام تو شریعت کا آئے گا، لیکن اپنی مرضی سے نہیں لے کر آتے ہیں تو مودی کی تلوار اور ڈنڈے کے ذریعے اس نظام کو گرائے گا اللہ. اور پھر جو شیر اور دلیر میدان جنگ میں کھڑے رہ جائیں گے وہی لوگ ہوں گے اس ملک پہ حکومت کرنے والے بھی اور اس کا نظام بدلنے والے بھی. تھوڑا انتظار کریں، وقت قریب ہے.
سر سیکنڈ
جی
لاسٹ کوشچن ہے حمزہ اور پھر سعید مبشر. سر یہ لاسٹ ہوگا، یہ لاسٹ 2 کوشچن ہے سر.
جی
انہوں
اور
نے بڑی دیر
بسم
سے
اللہ.
ریکویسٹ بھیجی ہوئی ہے تو آئی وانٹ دیم ٹو آنسر. تھینک یو سر.
جی حمزہ ڈائریکٹ سوال کیجیے. خیر سے. جی حمزہ سوال کریں.
جی حمزہ آپ کا مائک آن ہے، آپ پلیز کوشچن کریں اپنا.
جی حمزہ بسم اللہ، کیری آن بیٹا، بتائیے. خیر سے. حمزہ آپ کی آواز نہیں آ رہی. آئی کانٹ ہیئر یو. حمزہ ڈسکنیکٹ ہو گئے میرا خیال. آئی تھنک از ٹرائنگ ٹو کنیکٹ. مبشر آپ سوال کر لیں.
جی سعید مبشر آپ اپنا کوشچن کر لیں. یو آر دا لاسٹ ون ٹو آسک دا کوشچن. ٹائم سے ہم آگے نکل گئے. پلیز اپنا مائک ان میوٹ کر کے کوشچن کر لیں.
جی السلام علیکم سر، آپ کو آواز آ رہی ہے میری؟
جی مبشر سوال کریں، بسم اللہ خیر سے.
جی سر، میرا کوشچن یہ ہے کہ جب اللہ نہ کرے انڈیا، چانسز ہیں کہ ہمارے شہروں پہ قبضہ کر لے گا دوران جنگ، تو پاک فوج کو کیا ہوگا کہ وہ فوراً ہی انڈیا پر ایٹمی حملہ کر دے، اور اس بات کی نوبت ہی نہ آئے کہ وہ باہر سے تیسری قوت مداخلت کرے اور وہ نیگوشیٹ کر کے ہم سے وہ ایٹمی جو طاقت ہے وہ لینے کی کوشش کرے، اس سے پہلے ہی ہم انڈیا پہ حملہ کر کے اس کو ڈیفینیٹلی ایک جواب دے دیں؟
دیکھیے، ایٹمی حملہ شروع کرنا، کسی ملک پر ایٹمی حملہ کرنا اتنا آسان فیصلہ نہیں ہے. اس کے لیے بہت ہی جرأت مندانہ اور دلیر قیادت چاہیے، اور پاکستان کے پاس ایسی قیادت ہے نہیں. ہمارے پاس جو قیادت ہے، جب بھارت نے کشمیر پر قبضہ کر لیا تو پورے ملک کی تمام سیاسی جماعتیں سانس بند کر کے بیٹھ گئیں خاموشی سے. جو وزیر اعظم تھا وہ کہتا ہے میں حملہ کر دوں. مطلب یہ کوئی جواب تو نہیں ہوتا ایک ایٹمی طاقت کے سربراہ وزیر اعظم کا. اتنی بے بسی. شاہ محمود قریشی نے کہا تو وار از ناٹ این آپشن، یعنی آپ نے نیگوشیٹ کرنے سے پہلے، دشمن کو تھریٹ دینے سے پہلے ہی ہتھیار ڈال دیے. اور اب جو لوگ مسلط ہیں یہ تو ہے ہی بھارت نواز. یہ تو سارے وہ کہتے ہیں کہ بھارت اور پاکستان ایک ہی جیسے ہیں، بیچ میں ایسی لکیر آ گئی تھی، آلو گوشت تم بھی کھاتے ہو ہم بھی کھاتے ہو. یہ توقع کرنا کہ یہ لوگ ایک پریمپٹیو سٹرائک کریں گے بھارت کے اوپر، یہ پاسبل نہیں ہے. یہی تو وہ کمزوریاں ہیں، ہماری خامیاں ہیں، جس کی وجہ سے ہمارا خون بہے گا، ہمیں مار پڑے گی اب، جس کی وجہ سے دشمن اتنا اگریسو ہوا ہے کہ وہ اپرچونٹی دیکھ رہا ہے کہ پاکستان میں قیادت ہے ہی نہیں. پاکستان کی قوم تقسیم ہے، سیاسی جماعتیں کمپرومائزڈ ہیں، پوری سیاسی جماعتیں فوج کے خلاف ہو چکی ہیں. اور یعنی اس صورتحال سے معیشت تباہ ہو رہی ہے، ملک میں جگہ جگہ پہ دہشت گردی. جب یہ صورتحال بن چکی ہے تو اس میں کون سی ایسی قیادت ہے کہ جو بھارت کے اوپر پریمپٹیو سٹرائک کرے، آگے بڑھ کر حملہ کرے کہ بھارت پاکستان پر حملہ نہ کر سکے؟ انفارچونیٹلی یہ اس وقت ہو سکتا تھا اگر ہمارے پاس شاید جنرل ضیاء جیسی قیادت ہوتی، یا ایون جنرل مشرف جیسے ہوتا. کم از کم جو مرضی خامیاں تھیں لیکن انڈیا کے خلاف وہ بڑا شیر اور دلیر تھا. اس طرح کا اگر کوئی ہمارے پاس لیڈرشپ ہوتی اس وقت وہ کر جاتی، لیکن اس وقت نہیں ہے. اس وقت ہمیں مار پڑے گی، اور پھر اس مار کے نتیجے میں آپ قیادت بیٹل فیلڈ سے نکلے گی. ابھی آپ ان لوگوں کو نہیں جانیں گے. جو میدان جنگ میں کھڑا رہ جائے گا وہی آپ کا مجاہد ہوگا، وہی آپ کا آنے والے وقتوں کا لیڈر ہوگا. ابھی آپ ان سیاسی جماعتوں میں اور پاکستان میں لیڈر تلاش نہ کریں. جو آپ کو نظر آ رہے ہیں یہ سب فراڈ ہیں، سب فیک ہیں، یہ سب آزمائے جا چکے ہیں. سب کو موقع ملا پاکستان کے دفاع کے لیے کھڑے ہونے کا اور سارے کولیپس کر گئے، سب سرنڈر کر گئے، سب نے ہتھیار ڈال دیے. لہٰذا آپ ان سے دوبارہ توقع نہ کریں. ان کو دوبارہ موقع مل بھی گیا تو یہ وہی کریں گے جو یہ ماضی میں کرتے آئے ہیں. جب پاکستان کی عزت اور غیرت کا سوال ہوگا یہ چیخیں گے کیا میں حملہ کر دوں. تو یہ آپ ان سے توقع نہ کریں. یہ بیچ چکے ہیں آپ کو پہلے بھی، دوبارہ بیچیں گے. لیکن اب ان کے چاہیے جو مرضی چاہیں، اب ہوگا وہی جو اللہ چاہے گا. اللہ فیصلہ کر چکا ہے. بھارت نے، مشرکوں نے ہم پر حملہ کرنا ہے، ہم نے دفاع کرنا ہے، اور انشاءاللہ اس دفاع کے بعد وہ اس بڑی جنگ کا آغاز ہوگا جس کی بشارت ہمیں سیدی رسول اللہ نے عطا فرمائی ہے، غزوہ ہند کا. اور انشاءاللہ پھر کشمیر بھی آزاد ہوگا اور دہلی بھی ہم لیں گے. دہلی پہ پاکستانی پرچم بھی لہرائے گا، اور دہلی کی جامعہ مسجد میں انشاءاللہ ہم جمعے کی نماز بھی ادا کریں گے. شروع وہ کریں گے، ختم ہم کریں گے انشاءاللہ. اس کا وعدہ ہے ہمارے ساتھ. اپنے آپ کو اس کے لیے تیار کریں. پاکستان، اللہ پاکستان کی حفاظت کر رہا ہے. پاکستانی اپنی خیر منائے. اس پاکستان کی حفاظت کی جائے گی، سزا پاکستانیوں کو لگے گی. اپنی نیت ٹھیک رکھیں، اپنے آپ کو پاک رکھیں. نیت کریں غزوہ ہند کی، آپ چاہیں یا نہ چاہیں اس جنگ میں آپ کو جانا پڑے گا. نیت کر لیں غزوہ ہند کی. مارے بھی گئے تو شہید کی موت مریں گے انشاءاللہ. اللہ آپ کو سعادت دے، خوشیاں دکھائے، صحت تندرستی سلامتی سے رکھے، پاکستان کا محافظ بنائے، اور پاکستان کے محافظوں کی تلوار اتنی تیز رکھے کوئی کفر، کوئی شرک، کوئی صہیونی، کوئی یہودی، کوئی مشرک، کوئی ہندو سیدی رسول اللہ کی امت پر بری نگاہ نہ ڈال سکے. اللہ آپ سب کا حامی و ناصر ہو. ہم اجازت لیتے ہیں آپ سے. خوش رہیں، خوشیاں دیکھیں انشاءاللہ العزیز. اللہ نے عزت پاکستان کے نصیب میں رکھی ہے، اس عزت کا حصہ بنائیں اپنے آپ کو. پاکستان کو چیلنج نہ کریں، پاکستان کو ڈانٹ ٹپٹ نہ کریں. یہ پاکستان اللہ نے آپ کو احسان اور امانت کے طور پر دیا ہے، اس کی قدر کریں. اس کے علاوہ کوئی گھر نہیں ہے آپ کے پاس. جو اس کی قدر نہیں کرے گا ذلیل کیا جائے گا، جو قدر کرے گا نوازا جائے گا. اس کو یاد رکھ لیں بس. اللہ پاکستان کا حامی و ناصر ہو. اللہ آپ کو عزت دے. خوش رہیں. جزاک اللہ خیر. ہم اجازت لے رہے ہیں آپ سے. فی امان اللہ. السلام علیکم.
جی سر، تھینک یو ویری مچ فار ایکسٹینڈنگ دا ٹائم. آپ کی بہت مہربانی. اور کیونکہ زیادہ تر لوگ ادھر ہمارے سیشنز میں وہ چاہتے ہیں آپ کو سننا، اور کافی ڈیلے بھی آ گیا تھا. آئی ہوپ آج کا سیشن ہمارا اچھا ہوا ہے، اور اس کی ریکارڈنگ انشاءاللہ جیسے ہی ریڈی ہوتی ہیں فائلز ہم آپ کو پوسٹ کر دیں گے، اور ادھر ٹویٹر پہ اور یوٹیوب کے اوپر بھی اس کو ہم پبلش کر دیں گے. سر بہت خیال رکھیے گا. تھینک یو ویری مچ فار اٹینڈنگ دا سیشن، اور انشاءاللہ پھر آپ سے بات چیت ہوگی. تھینک یو ویری مچ. آپ سب کا بھی بہت بہت شکریہ.